Hello, everybody, and welcome to the last session of the day. This is going to be a presentation from Kitsap County about their Stormwater Management Action Planning. So I'd like to just remind you, if you've turned the back on, turn your phones back off, turn it back to silence. Again, we're going to be recording the presentation, and we'll turn the recording off for Q&A. And I'm going to introduce Brian Ward, but I forgot to bring my cheat sheet up. Sorry about that. Okay, Brian Ward has nearly 30 years of experience with stormwater planning, design, permitting, modeling, and hydraulic engineering. Brian manages HDR's Western Washington Stormwater Group, where he and his team have planned for and designed green stormwater infrastructure projects, prepared municipal stormwater comprehensive plans, and have provided full-service design to agencies throughout Western Washington. Thank you for presenting to us, Brian.
I'm going to take a cue from Carly here and pull this. Thank you, Karen, for that kind introduction. Thank you, folks, for staying through the end of the conference. I was quite I guess pleased when I saw the draw that I got. You know, it's like my lucky number. And so today, I also want to extend thanks to Kitsap County for embarking on the SMAP process early in the stage. You'll see in a minute that the Phase 2 municipal permit has some dates associated with doing SMAP planning. And it seems to me that Kitsap County is kind of on the cutting edge, the early side of this. And as Karen mentioned, my name's Brian Ward. I work with HDR. I've been practicing stormwater in Western Washington really since 1991. And I've kind of witnessed the evolution of stormwater regulations. And as the keynote speakers alluded to in the lunch talk today, watch the permit grow and evolve as well. And this is just my own personal opinion, but I'm really pleased to see the effect the permit is having on stormwater management and on kind of really the environment that we all live in. And in part, that's what inspired me to become a stormwater engineer, was sort of the environmental component to it. I mean, I like clean water. I like the idea that you can go out and fish and be able to eat these fish. And so what a privilege to live here in the Puget Sound, to practice in this discipline that I'm sure most of us do practice in. And then now here we are with the permit, we get to implement some additional actions with improving the environment and clean water. So Kitsap County and HDR engaged in this SMAP planning process, in February? So my presentation today is a little bit of what we've done to date and what we're planning to do. And so I've broken the agenda up into those 4 bullets there. A little bit about SMAP. So if you were here in the previous session, then you also learned something about SMAP. This is the planning session room, after all. And when I first read the guidance document that Ecology put out, it was just like, oh, watershed planning is not just a good idea anymore. It's actually part of the permit. And thus, we are here in front of you talking about how we're going to meet the conditions of this new requirement. And so I just kind of plucked a few things from the draft permit. This takes effect August 1st, unless things change. Just a little caveat there, because things are always possible. What is noteworthy is these dates right here, and in Kitsap County, to their credit, have decided to, really use this tool to help them with their existing capital facilities plan and their existing plans that they've been doing over the last several years. And I'll talk a little bit more about what plans they have. The new conditions in the MPDS and the Phase 2 municipal permit are not just SMAP planning that I'm going to be talking about today, but it's also coordinating with other long-range plans at the municipality, and then this continuation of low-impact development code requirements. Prior to working for HDR, I worked for the city of Bellevue for 15 years, and I was the face of the stormwater group there. And the times I went to the planning department and got to talk to them about the city's comprehensive plan update and how can stormwater influence that, it was kind of like, nice idea, but we've got that covered, see you later. So I really applaud this part of it as well. Finally, the stormwater people at the jurisdictions are going to have a say when it comes to the city's overarching comprehensive plan update. Stormwater has now like a leveraged voice in that conversation. So with the urban planners and the stormwater people are going to now be on the same page. More about SMAP. As we learned a minute ago, SMAP is this process that Ecology thankfully has laid out for us to kind of a stepwise process for doing meaningful stormwater or watershed basin planning. It provides us ultimately with a strategy for focusing our projects and our programs so that we can accommodate the future growth of the population that we're expecting here in Western Washington. And I just went and grabbed this little data point from the Office of Financial Management to note that 700,000 people moved to Washington since 2010. And Seattle's population is around, like the official city limits is around 740,000 people. So another city the size of Seattle has come to Washington State in the last 10 years. And so that's what this is about. This is about accommodating that growth, making sure that stormwater isn't the, stopping development. Because oftentimes it's really expensive to meet these stormwater regulations. And so one of our challenges is to find that happy balance between improving the environment, allowing development to occur, allowing growth to occur, but also maintaining these waterways and improving water quality. So as we learned, if you were here, how many were here in the previous session in this room? Okay, so like a third of you. So a little bit of a rehash of that. So the SMAP planning process begins with basin delineations and identifying the receiving waters. The steps are like right here. Assessing these receiving water conditions, and then understanding what the influences are. So what that is like how much of Kitsap County's municipal stormwater permit coverage area is in that particular stormwater basin. What's the opportunity for influence here? And then the identification of the protection goals and the restoration goals. So what we started out with is the basin delineations. We really aren't right now at this stage mapping out where are the jurisdictions. The first step is delineate your drainage basins, and it's sometimes that can be a challenging thing. But what we ended up doing was, we've had to ground truth some of the basin boundaries and making sure that that the lines are snapping in the GIS. So there's a little GIS work going on here. I've plotted out Kitsap County's existing stormwater plans. Those areas that are in the red dots are existing information. Kitsap County has been collecting water quality data. The county's Department of Health has been collecting fecal coliform data for many years, and so we have a lot of information that we're pulling into this SMAP process. But the first step here was delineating the basins, and the hatched area that you can see is the census urban area, and that ultimately is going to be where we start kind of putting the cookie cutter through these drainage basins and start talking about, okay, what's in the county's jurisdiction and what's not in the county's jurisdiction. And then, so West Dyes Inlet is this basin right here, right? And so we've gotten this far pretty much in our SMAP process. So what we've done is we've done this mapping, we've plotted out falls, we're collecting the data, we're georeferencing the data. There is a lot of information, and so it's about getting organized, what is the information? Is it, whoops, I keep hitting that wrong, but we're looking at both marine and freshwater water quality objectives. So we're at the point now where the receiving water objectives are entering the conversation now that we've kind of got the basins delineated and are starting to understand what information we have. The next step is prioritizing these basins. So we've got all these basins, and now we're collecting all this data. We're going to use this data to help us rank the drainage basins. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, what SMAP is about identifying the highest priority basin that you are going to tailor your projects and your programs for. And so this is a very sort of systematic and scientific way of finding out what is that basin where we're going to be putting our investment dollars in. And so some of the criteria that we are considering are, we're starting with ecology's beneficial use, habitat for fish and shellfish harvest, and where is the development pressure. Carly had a great slide. I really liked your slide of the Green River, and you overlaid the commercial and the landscape and as well as that alludes to some of the pollutant loading potential. So these are the types of criteria that we're going to be using also in Kitsap County. And it's really about, there's so much information and getting it organized. It is about, at this point, staying organized and knowing where your data is. And so what we've done here at HDR to get where's all this information coming from and how is it organized? So this is a database organization that we've put together for West Dyes Inlet, and I cut off the slide over here because if we branched out from here, you can go to a live link to a website, or you can go to a live link that takes you to a file of data that we have on our project-wise data, our network, basically. So I found this particular approach very helpful, and so we're going to be creating these schematics that have actual live links to the data that we're referring to, referenced by drainage basin here, and that's going to kind of help us stay organized. Of course, then the next part of this is the impairments of the waters. No offense, Chris, on putting this picture here and putting it on an impairment slide, but Clear Creek floodplain, just a little eye candy. Not that there's impairments there, but I do know that the county has a lot of work going on for fecal coliform management. They are collecting regular samples and are implementing a variety of programs to address fecal coliform. So that's one of the impairments that we'll be considering in our SMAP process as well. These are the types of information that we're going to use for helping us prioritize that basin. And then really, so ecology has kind of helped us in a very elementary, stepwise process get us to SMAP. And it's like it helps you figure out where you should invest your dollars as opposed to spreading your dollars evenly across all the drainage basins. And that after we get through the receiving water, so you delineate your basins, you identify your criteria, you figure out what your impairments are, and then you rank and orient your basins. And that's when you begin the actual kind of process of doing SMAP development. So what we're going to do with the highest priority basin will be to recommend projects and programs that are specific to that area, that are going to address the particular water quality impairment that we see in that basin. SMAP also is expecting to see cost estimates put together for these programs and these projects. That's going to help the utility with its rates and basing, it's a really important part. You need to make sure that the utility rates are founded upon real data, so that when it comes time to implementing these projects, you've got the resources to do that. And then the final part of SMAP is coming up with these schedules. in the guidance document, they talk about near-term actions and long-term actions. And that's part of what we'll be doing for the county also, is developing those schedules. So in keeping with the last session of the day, of the two-day conference, I wanted to kind of get through and have enough time for questions. But I do want to summarize with what I've experienced so far in this project is, and what I'd like to leave with you is past planning efforts apply. So I've talked with Ecology on a couple times, and one of the main messages is that they aren't expecting jurisdictions to hit the reset button on planning. Okay, so you saw that slide earlier where Kitsap County has all these different basin plans for different areas. Those projects and those plans are going to be useful and helpful in this process. Go out and delineate your basins, or sometimes it's just a matter of just verifying the ones that you have. I'm sure most of you, if you've ever done this, you know that there are discrepancies out there between where your drainage basins are, so it's a good idea to do that. We're pulling in data from the Department of Ecology, from Kitsap County, and it's really key that the data point that we're using, if it lands in Basin 1 on one basin delineation, but it's landing in a basin number 2 from a different data set, that you know about that and you're aware of that. The other part is getting organized and staying organized, because it can be overwhelming, the amount of information that you've got. I'm really happy with this. That software I'm using is called MindMap. I recommend it. It's very active, and it's very easy to use. And the beautiful thing about it is that it has live links to the files. So you want to know where that Excel chart belongs, and you just double click it and data pops up and you can follow it to West Eyes Inlet. Another key piece to SMAP is this fourth bullet about working with your neighbors. One of the concerns that I have is, what if Kitsap County, so the county shares jurisdictional boundaries with some of these watersheds. So what if Kitsap County, in the process, it lands on, this is our highest priority basin, but the other jurisdiction comes up with a different answer. And so then they're going to do some projects in Basin 2, we're going to do projects in Basin 1. It really pays to make sure that you're talking and you're coordinating with the other jurisdictions, so that really, ultimately, we can leverage our work, we can improve the water quality, and ultimately, we're coordinated in that effort. And then finally, trust the process, build consensus. You might be needing to talk to your other staff internally as well. Like, you get the other internal agencies on board with this process. And at the end of that, we can go make clean water. And last slide here. These are some resources that I wanted to share with you that many of you are probably aware of. Department of Ecology, watershed characterization, great sources of information on water quality there. The SMAP guidance is really, if you're a phase 2 jurisdiction and you've been sort of thinking about SMAP, that's your first spot right there. Your launch pad is the SMAP guidance. Go check that out. Of course, the State Stormwater Center, and earlier today I saw a great presentation on the Stormwater Action Monitoring Group, and they're producing some really relevant information that could be applicable to your SMAP process. With that, I am finished in concluding my presentation, and I'm now available to answer questions.